Welcome to the Let's Keep It Light podcast, and thanks for listening. In this episode, Ginger and Marcie will be discussing the different categories of light therapy products.
All right, so today we're talking about the different types of light therapy devices. Again, the term the industry uses is photobiomodulation, but if you're looking up research on light therapy, you might be looking under photobiomodulation or LLLT for low-level light therapy, or you may be looking up red light therapy or infrared, but you also may be looking up LED light therapy. So these devices all use some form of LED lights, right, Mars?
Well, you have to make sure that they are. There are some who might also be using laser light.
Okay. So for the most part, when we're talking about, and I'll go over the different types of devices that you and I are going to be discussing today. So we have the pad-based systems of light therapy. We have bars that are red infrared lights. There are panels, torches, pads, pin lights, micro lights, mats. The market seems to be flooded with, because people are waking up to the benefits of light therapy. So one of the questions, and I'm going to start right off the bat with this question that we get asked all the time, because a lot of the light therapy devices are kind of spendy. They're not cheap, okay? And some of them are. So there's differences. And for a later time, we're going to talk more about that. But over and over, I've been asked the question, well, if you're using LED lights in that system, then how come, can I just wrap my Christmas tree lights? Those are LED. Can I wrap them around me? Will I get some benefit from that? So Marcie, if I wrap my Christmas tree lights around me, since they're LEDs, will I get some benefit?
So I have to say that question is a real question. It comes up once a season, and it is definitely one that has a little bit longer than you would think explanation. First off, the lights that are effective have been tested for the wavelength they are. So they have chosen wavelengths of color, and red has many different wavelengths that still look red, but there are certain wavelengths, that means from the crest to the crest of a wave, that work. And those are the ones that you want to use. So Christmas lights do not use those colors. So they use the colors that are wavelengths that don't really do the job of modulating, and affecting the cells. So it's important to not put Christmas lights on you thinking they're going to do the job, because they're not. I'd like to clarify just a couple of things. Recently, and that means within the last 10 years for FDA, that's pretty recent.
And what's the FDA?
Food and Drug Administration, who had a very stringent way of testing light therapy devices. And companies had to go through great testing to show safety and effectiveness. However, they did that for a long time, and the FDA recently, in 2016 and 2019, said, okay, we can now say that they're safe and effective, and they don't have to go through the same testing as before. However, there's a distinction between devices and products that they made, and it's a very subtle thing.
Right. So again, just to remind our audience, we're talking about the Food and Drug Administration who regulates devices. They've changed the classification of light therapy devices from a class 2 medical device. A lot of them were classified as class 2 medical devices, which means it's a device that does no harm, right? But they even went into a broader, more general, more, I don't know, except whatever, widely.
They now call them health and wellness products.
Categories.
So
because they're so safe and effective.
That is true. If the technology, and this is technically important, if the technology can diagnose an illness or a condition, it's a device. If it can't and it doesn't, it's a product now. So that's another change. So all our language has been that these are all devices. And the truth is they are technologies that could be a device or they could be a product depending on what they do. And that puts a large category of wonderful products out on the market that don't diagnose. They do the good of what light does for modulating the issue that we're dealing with. So all these used to be called devices that we're going to be talking about are products. And that's the newest language, and it's the language we'll try to use, but we'll revert back to our old ways.
That's a great distinction because I'm still used to using the old terminology. So today, when we're talking about the products, we're talking about the different categories of products in the light therapy industry.
Correct.
Okay. And generally speaking, they are bars, pads, mats, torches, microlights, and panels. And I'm sure there's others, but those are the ones that we're most familiar with.
Correct.
So you use different light therapy products.
I sure do.
Than I do. And some of the products that we use are the same.
And some are different. Manufacturers you can actually open up a magazine and there may be ads now for 3 different flavors of products that are pads. And you can look again, and there are 3 or 4 different manufacturers that are providing individual light sources like flashlights, but they call them torches. And it's a way of delivering light that is manufactured here, there, and yon. I mean, it is the multiple products that are out there and the multiple manufacturers simply reflect the expanded need for and desire for more and more capacity to use light therapy or photobiomodulation. It's exciting.
Right. And in future podcasts, we'll talk about how do we know if one product looks identical to another one. Let's say you're flipping through a magazine and one looks identical. One might cost $100, the other one costs $4,000. Okay. What's the difference? How do you know? Are you getting ripped off with the $4,000? Or is that a better product just because it's more expensive? Or is it the other one the same? And there's a lot we have to say about that, but not for today. That's going to be in the future.
But I will say that you are aware that you need to pay attention to the specifications of the product you're buying.
Right.
That's important. And you need to look at it and see what it is and what it says. And if there are any particular reasons why the manufacturer might say, don't use blah, 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 unless it's under blah, blah, blah conditions, you pay attention to their directions.
Yeah. And that's really important.
So we're not here to evaluate products. We're here to tell you that they're out there.
Right.
And that they do different things and they are effective in different ways.
And certainly we have our own preferences because we've been out there a long time. But again, that's not the point of this podcast.
Right. So I use pads a great deal, but I also have techniques whereby I use microlights that are small, like flashlights. They have the wavelength that does the job that's been researched. So you can't just go get a flashlight, just like you can't go get Christmas lights to do the job.
Okay, but when you say a microlight is like a flashlight, the microlights I've seen you using are teeny tiny.
They're tiny, but they still have the voltage, the electricity. In other words, the power that they have is sufficient to do the job.
Okay, so let's start with the most common of all of the systems products out there in my universe is a pad-based system.
Correct. That's the one I'm used to as well.
Now, in an earlier episode, we talked about using light therapy on the human physiology. I want to say right now that all of us who have animals and we own light therapy devices, almost all of us let our animals use the device because they love it. Now, what is that? How does that work? On a future podcast, we're going to have some experts in large animals like horses and cows using light therapy on them. So definitely they respond extremely well. And that's just a whole nother topic altogether. So it's not just for the human being, but we're talking now about the human being and I use the pad-based system most commonly, and you do as well. That was my first introduction to light therapy.
Mine was to a handheld cold laser, which is still on the market, and different manufacturers are using it. And it is equivalent in safety to the LED lights that are in the pad.
Okay, great.
So when you start looking at all the products that are out there, the flavor is incredibly diverse. And so the pad system has value because it's close to the body. You put it directly on the body. And many of the other products like panels are at a distance. So you have to have the certain amount of energy and you need to be at a certain distance for the maximum benefit of the panel.
Okay. So with the pad-based system, which is what I started with too, I'll just tell a little story about that real quick. I had an academy or ran an academy for biofeedback and we taught other courses as well. And so I had just moved into a new building and I had a friend, a colleague who wanted to have her office in my office. So of course I agreed. It was a big facility. I loved having somebody else there, but she was doing light therapy with pad-based system. And so it was also an event center. So she was always bringing in speakers to talk about this light therapy. Well, I already felt like I had everything I needed in my little healing, health, wellness, medicine chest for my clients and my family, because I had biofeedback, I had herbs, I had homeopathics, I had essential oils, I had all these different things, and I didn't need another expensive toy. That's how I looked at that. My biofeedback device was like a $20,000 unit. I just did not. So I would sort of listen to the different speakers coming in, and they would be talking about, nitric oxide and different things, the miracle molecule. And I really didn't honestly pay attention until these clients kept coming into my colleague's office, and they'd be all jolly walking in. And I would overhear them say, "I want you to run that anti-aging program." Well, I was interested in that. Okay. I was definitely interested in that. So she had told me I could use her pad-based system whenever I wanted to. So one day nobody was in the building, and I went over to her little office, and the pad-based system also had a small pad that mostly that you would use over your eyes, the eye mask, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And in this one, it had red and blue light. You know, at that time, we were really cautioned not to put infrared directly into the eyes. So I went over and I put that face mask on my throat for anti-aging reasons, and I put the setting on the setting for anti-aging. It was a 20-minute program. I turned it on, and I put some pads elsewhere, I don't know where. And after 20 minutes, it shut itself off, and that was it. So I got up and I went into the bathroom mirror, and I'm looking to see if my gobble gobble turkey neck, maybe it's tightened up in 20 minutes. Well, I really didn't notice any difference in that. It felt really good. I felt really good. And it was lunchtime, so I got in the car and I'm driving over to Whole Foods for lunch, and a song came on the radio, and I started singing. And I had not been able to sing for 2 solid years. And I thought, what did I eat today that could have possibly helped my voice? And I couldn't think of anything that I could have eaten. And then I thought, well, what did I drink today that could have helped my voice? Because I have been suffering with not being able to sing for 2 years. Now, I've never been a soloist. It wasn't that was not the issue. I wanted to be able to sing to my children, happy birthday, and, Santa Claus is coming to town. It wasn't a big request, but I missed having my singing voice. And when I would try to sing, the notes would just not connect. So for a couple of days, I kept thinking, I kept being able to sing for 3.5 days. I thought about the light therapy. Could it have been that light therapy that I was using on my throat for anti-aging purposes? Could that have done anything to my singing voice? And even though I've seen what I would consider many healings and many miracles in the field of energy medicine and natural healing, that was still a stretch for me. But on the afternoon of that 4th day, the grovel started to come back in my singing, in my voice, where those notes weren't going to connect again. And I honestly, this is so silly, but I got mad at God. It's like, okay, God, well, if you were going to give, like as if God's, giving us and taking away our stuff, like my singing voice. Like I would have preferred if you didn't give me my singing voice back, just to take it away. And I even knew that was very silly and petty and ridiculous. But then the thought that followed it is, if it was the lights, that light therapy, it should be repeatable. So I went back to the office. I put that face mask on my throat. I did a 20-minute session, and I have been able to sing ever since. That's how I came to light therapy. And so it was through the pad-based system, just trying it out twice. After that, it was like, I must have this. So one of the things I like about a pad-based system is that it, as you said, Marcie, it goes against the skin or goes directly on the body. My understanding of that is that you're getting the release of the nitric oxide, the increased circulation, all of that is happening in a big way in a short period of time. And we'll go over later, like where we put the lights and all that. But we were always putting the pads over one of them, over the midsection. And you've taught about putting the lights over the navel because all the blood is passing constantly at the navel. And so you're every cell is being infused with light over and over and over again in even 20 minutes. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yes, I'd like to say that it's rare that people have such a dramatic change in their physiology based on using the light. It is generally slower.
In your experience, not in my experience. But
I'm trying to say to people who are thinking in terms of using light therapy, using photobiomodulation, that it isn't necessarily a ginger effect. It's a beautiful story, and it is a way that she knew that it was working. How do I know that it's working? That's one of those questions that we get all the time. How do we know that this isn't just hoorah and hokum and, a sideshow? Well, the answer is
placebo effect.
And a placebo effect. So the answer is really important for looking at going forward with more investigation of photobiomodulation on your part, because it is a physiological change in you. And sometimes it's dramatic, like Ginger's, and most of the time it's subtle. It's small amounts of pain that get better, or it's more of a mood change or a peaceful experience. It is of value to you because it is a unique way that light is impacting you. And one of the most important things about using light is intention. And I'd like to say that intention is so valuable, and it's something that therapists do all the time. So when we apply the pads or the lights or the microlights or whatever we're doing, we intend that it do the best for this particular person at this particular time. And we ask the client to make that same intention, that we benefit the best we can today for the gift of light in our lives today at this moment.
So I just want to jump in on you and say, and I agree with everything you're saying. Dr. Fuller used to say this would be chasing a rabbit, that we would go, do a little side chase here. But the thing is that there's a difference, and he taught us this. And Dr. Fuller was just an amazing minister and just an amazing human being. And he said the difference between a miracle and a healing is a miracle takes place right now, and a healing takes place over time. Okay. So what you're describing is a healing in my understanding and in my language. Okay. For me, I like miracles. I like miracles. And I ask for miracles and I get them. Now, I didn't ask for that miracle of the singing voice to come back. I had tried everything, biofeedback, herbs, homeopathics, chiropractics, everything to get my singing voice to come back. The fact that it came back in really two 20-minute sessions, to me, was a miracle. Through these 15 years or however many years or 18 years or however long it has been that we've been using a pad-based system, and we'll get into the other ones in a bit, I honestly have seen many miracles, but it is much more common to see a healing or an improvement. People are sleeping better. They're not so grouchy. They're not so mean. They like their husbands now. They have energy to play with their grandchildren. That's the more common.
Right.
Their pain has gone away. So they feel like cooking dinner now.
These are subtle benefits of using light therapy in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the more common thing, for sure.
And so you probably don't get this on ads when they're advertising using light therapy or buying a device or buying a product that we see all the time now. 10 years ago, we didn't see ads about photobiomodulation. We didn't see promotions to use it. But rarely do you have the information that it's way more than just a physical change in your body, which is wonderful, but it is definitely a systemic and a holistic approach to improving our lives, really.
And helping us to lighten up.
Yes.
Literally.
Lighten it up.
Lighten up. And that's, again, that's in the future conversation for understanding energy. And vibrationally, we are literally, when you're flooding the system with that much light, you're literally raising the vibration of someone's body. And that's why we feel better. We feel uplifted.
Right.
We lightened up. Okay, so with the pad-based system, another thing that I like about a pad-based system is that you just apply, I can put the pads on my kids or my clients and leave the room because it's an unintended therapy. So that's a cool thing. And then the system, most of the systems that I've seen, that will just shut themselves off after about 20 minutes. And why is that?
Because that's sufficient to do the job that you put the pad on for the first place. It is sufficient. And sometimes, because we're in a good mood and we like it, we hit the button and we go another 20 minutes, which doesn't hurt. But in truth, the research shows that 20 minutes worth of light does what we want it to do for that particular reason that we put it, for pain or for emotion or for whatever. It seems to be sufficient amount of time. Doesn't mean that you don't repeat it 4 times during the day.
Right. And for me, sometimes I just like the way it feels, so I'll keep hitting the button, or sometimes move the pads to another location, because it used to be, and I'm not sure this is in the research now that this is current, but back 12 years ago, or however long ago we started researching this or learning about it, for me personally, that it was a local event. Wherever you put the pad, that's where the release of nitric oxide was. That's why we were moving the pads to another location for, after 20 to 30 minutes, because all the nitric oxide that could have been released in that location was already released. Is that, do you know if that's still the current understanding?
Well, there's local effect, but no, it's a systemic effect.
Yeah. Well, we also figured that out even without reading the research. But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's on pad. Anything else you would want to say on a pad-based system that you like?
There are unique ways of addressing issues with pads. And we will go into those issues eventually. So we'll have a podcast on neuropathy. We'll have a podcast on fibromyalgia, on migraines, on cognitive issues, where you would use pad-based, specifically how to use it for that issue.
And athletic injuries or training.
So we're just introducing today, but there will be more podcasts for detailed explanations and time for questions, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that we like other kinds of products and we use other kinds of products. So stay tuned. Those will be podcasts as well.
But we're going to give an overview of these other categories of products right now.
That's fine with me. You bet.
So the next one, let's go to one of your loves, big love, which is the microlights. I know almost nothing about them. So what, and there's that little tiny
one.
Okay, so tell us about that.
So one of the benefits of the microlight is that it is highly focusable. You can put it like right on where it hurts. I mean, you've got a trigger point. You can put the microlight right there. And I have infrared, red, blue, green, all of the colors. But the most important place to put this little microlight, believe it or not, is your belly button. And the reason for that is that if you put the pad on your belly button, that's good. And that's something that we recommend. But the microlight actually is able to go right through that tissue into the vena cava and the artery. And one of the benefits of this activity that you're doing is the histamines and the cytokines that cause inflammation systemically go down. And the chemistry of anti-inflammatory goes up. So you're systemically changing the inflammatory nature of your body. So if you're hurting at your ankle, you've got inflammation. But you put the belly button, you put light on the belly button. With the microlight, it's effective. There are also other techniques to use it so that you can put it on one place in your head and it actually changes how you feel in other locations. It reduces the pain in other locations because light travels through the body, they believe through the fascia. So it's really a really wonderful technique, but it's not used by very many people and it has to be taught. But it is one way of doing that. There are also larger lights that are like flashlights called torches that are used really quite effectively on large animals. And this is huge. And even smaller animals and dogs and so forth, there's techniques of using it that are easy to learn, especially if you've got an animal that has issues. But if you have an issue that is one that always keeps cropping up, it's a quick intervention. We can put pads on for 20 minutes, but you can also put a torch on for 10 and get a very nice effect.
And you may be driving in your car with a torch where you could, because most of them look like a little flashlight.
They look like flashlights.
A little flashlight. So you might be, putting that on a point, whereas you can't pull out your pad-based system
right. So
while you're driving down the interstate. I mean, technically you could, but you're not going to do that.
You're not supposed to do that.
You're not going to do that. You might feel too good. No.
But it is, you have to be trained, but it is definitely an application of light in ways that are fast and quick and to the trigger points. We all know that, man, if you can get that done, that makes a big difference. And then later you do the systemic work with the pads.
Now, the torches that I've seen and used, though I have no real expertise in it, they were red light,
infrared,
green,
blue,
red, infrared, blue, green. That's what I've seen.
But you can get the others.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then, so now let's go into a product category that I don't think either one of us has a lot of expertise in, but you've probably had more exposure to than I. And that would be the red light panels.
I'm going to separate it out because panels for SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder, that occurs when there's not a lot of sunlight over in the different areas of the United States or other places of the world. It provides the light necessary to reset the body's ability to function. And so that panel that is used for that has been around for years and years and valuable for years and years. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about are panels that are the red and infrared light, and some even have blue, and some even have green. But the value of that is that it's a whole body system. Many hang on the door, and you stand in front of the panel, and it does your entire body. Now, that's almost as good as getting in a tanning booth that's been converted to LED light therapy. That is the full body experience. And I do have reports on a place here in this small town that has converted their tanning booth into an LED light therapy booth, basically. It is difficult to do and get the same result as pad-based, but it's easier to do sometimes. It's
because you're getting the whole body at one time.
Yeah, that's for the whole body. But I mean, getting a small panel is easier sometimes than sitting for 20 minutes. It doesn't take as long. People don't stay in front of the panel as long. But there's some advantages to having a panel.
Right. The only experience I've personally had with the panel is that we had a manufacturer send us a panel to try out. And I liked it, but I had to sit in front of it. And it was just a tabletop model. And I had to sit in front of it. And for me, that was not convenient. But for many people, that would be very convenient.
So it's available.
Yes.
And it's used by many people. So it is kind of like we now have a smorgasbord of possibilities where 10 years ago, even 8 years ago, we didn't have that. So it's really check out what's available, look at it, see if you can test it before you make a huge purchase. But it's something that is a personal decision based on how you are feeling about it. Then again, if it doesn't take away your pain, you got to switch.
Yeah, so do your homework.
Yes.
And just because one device may look exactly like another device does not mean they're the same. Okay? So, make sure to go with a reputable company for any of your devices. I remember we had a manufacturer, someone show up for one of our certification courses because even though he was qualified to teach the course by far, he actually wanted certification in light therapy. And so someone asked him, well, there's a face mask advertised in my flight magazine. What makes that different? Can't I take your pad that has red and infrared, just put that on my face? Or should I spend the extra money to do the face mask? And so he looked at all the specs and all of that, and he said, one LED diode that we had in our pad-based system that he manufactured was more powerful than all of the LEDs that were in that total face mask. Am I saying this right?
Yes. And so, therefore, buyer beware.
Right. And so, yeah. And I think through, future episodes, we are going to learn a whole lot more about all the different kinds of devices and interview some of these people with panels and torches and other things and learn more all together. But just because it looks like the same system, just do your homework. That's all we're saying, because we've done our homework.
Marcie Denton and Dr. Ginger Bowler are certified light therapy instructors and co-founders of the Light and Energy Training Seminars certification program. You can send us an email with your questions and comments to podcast@letskeepitlight.com, and be sure to visit us on Facebook and Instagram. This episode was engineered and mixed by Dr. Decibel Productions. I'm Sarah Weston. Thanks for listening, and until next time, let's keep it light.